Got another comment from a viewer on YouTube, and this one is about the video Building Pipelines to Nowhere. You do the math on Ford and Smith pipeline dramas. We posted this yesterday. And the viewer is Bill Gibbard. He posted the comment today, so you can go see it if you want. But he had a number of questions that I thought were really good, and I want to answer them as best I can. First one, how feasible is it to build an oil refinery in Western Canada to supply several of the provinces and territories, including Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and possibly northwestern Ontario? The answer is not very feasible at all. So in 2017, it was IHS Market now, but then they were bought out by S&P Global, which is a huge energy research firm. And the lead author is an energy economist, one of my favorite guys, Kevin Byrne. So they did a study on whether or not it was feasible to build refineries and upgraders in Canada. And the answer was no. The economics just do not make sense. The only thing that made sense was partial upgrading. And what he means by that is you take the ultra heavy sour crude oil from the Alberta oil sands that requires to be diluted 20 to 30% with light hydrocarbons, so it'll flow in a pipeline. And you partially upgrade that to either a heavy crude that will flow in a pipeline or a medium crude. And that way you don't need any diluent or very little diluent. And you free up space in the pipeline and you uplift the value of that barrel of oil 10 to $15. So according to that study, and I've asked Kevin since then if the results still apply, and he said yes, they do. So I think we can assume that it is not economic to build any more refineries in Western Canada. And furthermore, you have the example of the Sturgeon refinery in the Redwater, Northwest Sturgeon refinery, no, Northwest Redwater Sturgeon refinery. I forget. It's in Sturgeon County, I think, in Alberta. And that was built, I think it went into service 2019, 2020, had all sorts of cost overruns and is generally considered, it was also subsidized by the Alberta government, had bitumen in kind that supported it. And I think there was actually some Alberta money, and it has not been all that successful. Yes. So no one's rushing to build new refineries in Western Canada for that reason. And how feasible is it to build an oil pipeline and an oil refinery to supply Eastern Canada? Well, this is a question that got raised yesterday as a result of the press conference between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Ontario Premier Doug Ford. And they announced two memorandums of understanding, MOUs. And the first one is going to be looking at the feasibility of building a bitumen pipeline out to Ontario and also maybe either it was vague on this point. Something refinery investments, I think is how they described it. There's going to be a feasibility study undertaken, so we'll see what that brings back. But as a rule, we know that in Ontario, the only refinery that has the coking equipment to handle dilbit, this ultra heavy sour crude from Alberta, is in Sarnia. It's 120,000 barrels a day. So that alone is not enough demand to justify a pipeline. Then you would have to either build new refineries, which are probably not feasible, because I looked up the stats on Statistics Canada, and Ontario gasoline consumption has fallen by 1 million liters a year since peaking in about 2018. And diesel, while it has also fallen, but to a lesser extent. So the demand on the demand side is declining already. Why would you convert refineries at a cost of billions and billions of dollars, or try to build a new one in a market that's getting softer and softer with each year? And by the way, the adoption rate for electric vehicles in Ontario is between 8 and 10%. So the auto fleet there is not increasing at the same rate as, say, BC and Quebec, which are 20%, but it is increasing, and electrification is clearly the way we're going to be going. And don't forget, Canada has a zero emission vehicle mandate for 2035 when 100% of vehicles have to be ZEV. None of those trends bode well for building a pipeline or building refineries in Ontario. Now, Here's the third question. What is the feasibility of natural gas pipelines to feed Asian and European markets? Well, we just had, last week, LNG Canada with $40 billion LNG project in Kitimat on the west coast of BC shipped its first LNG project or cargo to Asia. And one of the reasons it works is because Shell Canada, I think it's the operator, has enormous reserves of natural gas in northeastern BC. It gets there through the Coastal Link gas pipeline, and it's very cheap. And so the economics work according to Shell, and so I guess we'll see how that goes. So there's a couple of questions here. Can we build more LNG plants? Now, there's been a couple of announcements of smaller plants, about a seventh the size of the LNG Canada project. But the question again always comes back in Canada to supply. We have cheap gas. We can build these plants on the West Coast. And because we're at a northern latitude, our summers are cooler, our winters are even cooler yet. And that gives us lower operating costs. And so we should be competitive. And why don't we build more of these? Again, where is the demand? And I know that there's projected increases in demand, but there are also in the this year, next year, and the year after, there is an enormous amount of LNG supply coming on the market. It's coming from Qatar, it's coming from the United States, and a few other smaller producers. And the IEA has forecast that there will be enough supply out to at least 2040. We're not short of supply of LNG to 2040. Now, I've interviewed an expert, Anne Sophie Corbeau, and she used to be BP's head of gas, and now she's at Columbia University, and she's very, very good. And she said, "Look, Marco, there's way too much uncertainty in the market right now. Chinese demand is projected by many companies. They think it's going to be strong going forward." She says, "I don't think so." She said, "I have concerns about that. Europe is trying to electrify to get itself off gas and LNG imports and gas and Russian gas. This is a time of tremendous uncertainty, and there's a reason why we have like 18 or 20 LNG projects that have been approved, and they're just sitting there waiting for a final investment decision, is because the economics aren't that great. So if you look at it from my point of view, hydrocarbons, oil and gas, are yesterday's fuel. The International Energy Agency has said very clearly, the age of oil is done. The age of electricity is beginning. That is the arc for the rest of the century, is the gradual and increasingly rapid electrification of the global energy system on both the supply side, which means more construction of wind and solar and hydro and nuclear and probably eventually advanced geothermal and who knows what else will come along. And on the demand side, you've got electric vehicles and heat pumps and electrical processes like electric arc furnaces in steel making. That's the trend. So the question Canada needs to ask itself is, are we going to participate in the energy system of the future, or are we going to double down on the energy system of the past, where demand will soon be declining, and we have plenty of competitors? That's the question.